Hello and welcome to episode 3 of my MyTeam series. This is Azerbaijan, our first sprint race weekend of the series. If you did miss last episode, please sure to check that one out as we were in Australia. It was our home race. It was a bit of a more difficult race on our behalf. We had no straight line speed in the race, and with that middle sector now being altered, straight line speed is a bit more important around Australia, which it did mean we struggled quite a bit and did not finish in the points. There was plenty of battles though going through the field, especially for the win, with a couple of last lap overtakes to settle the podium finishes. Max Verstappen did get the win though, but ourselves, we were disqualified post-race, which still haven't got to the bottom of why we did get disqualified. But eyes forward now, it's time to head to Azerbaijan and hopefully try and get some points. I reckon if we can get a couple of points finishes in the season for our first season as a team, that would be a pretty good first season, I reckon. So now let's head to the track. Here we are now in practice 1. As you can see, this is the third lap of our practice program, and our first and second lap have been on target, which is a good sign going into the race weekend, because it really does just prove that our race pace should be pretty well set and good for the race, because in the end I don't mind if my qualifying is a little bit off, just really as long as my race pace is there to prove that. Onto our next program now, and it's the qualifying sim, and as you can see, it's a lot more overcast now, which I was hoping would actually improve our chances of getting a good simulation done, as it may have made the soft tyre a bit more useful. But as you can see, our straight line speed has actually been compromising us a little bit here. You can see there was a little bit of a spike as we were going through the more twisty section of the second sector, but since then we just didn't have the pace to continue and keep up with it. So looking at the results from practice there, we did end up topping the session, as we were probably the only drivers out there doing a qualifying sim. But Max Verstappen and Carlos Sainz round out the top 3 on the medium and the hard tyre, but they're only 3 tenths behind us, so I don't think we actually genuinely have a pace to be going for the win, but you never know as we now head into qualifying. And jumping straight into it, as you can see, we're here in the middle sector on our first flying lap, and we turned in a bit too early there, and we've actually compromised our front wing, so I reckon it's just going to be best if we box this lap and abort this one, so then we can try and get ourselves a good first proper lap. And as you can see now, we're pulling into the pit lane. We're just going to get the front wing swapped over, and I reckon we're just going to head out on the same set of these scrub tyres now as a set of new tyres. I don't think it will give me such a big benefit, as these tyres have only done an out lap and about a quarter of a actual push lap, and now coming to the end of our first proper flying lap here. As you can see, 2 green sectors as expected, as this is our first flying lap. Iwasa is in front of us in 21st, so as long as we can try and hopefully get ourselves into Q2, I want to try and just take it one step at a time. So our goal here is to get into Q2, but as you can see, we only just managed to beat Iwasa. We're 5 tenths down on Yuki Tsunoda. Now this is it. We have to get a good lap in here, and as you can see, we've really compromised ourselves on our exit there onto the big straight, as we hit the wall at turn 19. So as you can see on our steering wheel and up in the top corner, our delta is absolutely tumbling, and can we make it to Q2? No. P20 is all we've got in the end, so that is not a great start. So now we've put on a lot more pressure for our stint in the sprint race, and as you can see there, Carlos Sainz tops qualifying 1.
Welcome to today's sprint. Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks for today's sprint. Max Verstappen put in a fantastic lap yesterday, and he'll start from pole position. And it's Charles Leclerc in P2. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Sainz, Russell, Perez, Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, Norris, Gasly, Ocon, Stroll, Albon, Bottas, Hülkenberg, Magnussen, Tsunoda, Sargent, Joe, Oscar Piastri, the Rainmaster, Iwasa, and Nick de Vries. Which of these drivers will get pole position today? We'll soon find out. And a warm welcome, of course, to my co-commentator here today, someone of tremendous experience and insight. It's the man himself, Anthony Davidson. Now, can I get your take on Max Verstappen?
Well, it was a really impressive lap in qualifying to get pole position, but are they going to be able to hold on to the lead into the first corner with so many quick starters around them? And let's see who's able to keep their tyres in that temperature sweet spot early on. You've got a great tyre warmer underneath your right foot, and the drivers need to make the most of that on the formation lap, lest they see themselves skating wide at turn 1 on cold rubber.
And here we are now on the grid for the sprint race. Not really too much to do with the strategy this time around. We're just going to adjust our fuel load a little bit to try and make the car a little bit lighter. But I reckon the entire field will try and do this 9-lap sprint race on the medium tyre as we now head off for our formation lap. Try and get these tyres into our optimum range. So try and make our start a bit more optimal, because I reckon the aim of the game here will be try and make up as many positions early on in the sprint race, as I don't think our pace on this medium tyre so far this series has been really that good. So in the main Grand Prix, I reckon the hard tyre is probably the tyre we want to spend most of our time on. As you can see, really trying to get any sort of temperature into these tyres all the way up to the very end of this formation lap. And as you can see now, pulling into our grid box, try and get it nice and close. And there you go, that's probably the closest we've had it all season long, as we now head to 5 red lights. And we're away for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. It's actually a pretty good start there. We're trying to go around Zhou, but Zhou blocks off the start actually. He squeezes us towards the wall, and it's 3 wide ahead between Magnussen, Zhou and Piastri. So I would imagine there's going to be a little bit of contact. We take a tighter line to try and get a better run on the 3 of them, but don't really get anything of it. And as we're actually squeezed into a bit of an awkward spot, so we can't really make up any positions. So we'll have to see what we can do now into turn 3 at the end of this straight. Try and tuck into any sort of slipstream that is available to us. And we're going to send it around the outside of quite a few drivers. We did kind of had a little sniff to try and get around Magnussen as well, but thought better of it, as we'll try and go down the inside of Zhou, as he's hung out wide by Magnussen. But it's Magnussen who actually gets the worst run from Zhou. So Zhou ends up making the position up on Magnussen, as we now just tuck into the train and probably just sit tight for now. I don't think there's really too much we can do. We might be able to send a bit of a dive into turn 7. And into turn 7 we come. And as you can see, we do send a very large dive onto Kevin Magnussen, cut the curb a bit. A little bit of contact was made, but we did get the move done. It was a bit argy-bargy, but around street circle like this, you need to get your elbows out a little bit, as we actually nearly send it into the turn 8 wall. And now we've got a bit of a gap to Zhou Guanyu in the Alfa Romeo ahead of us. But we do now have P18. Now heading onto the main straight. We've got Magnussen right up behind us, and as you can see, he's now pulling up alongside us, but tucks back into our slipstream, as we did get a bit of a better run, and we're trying to squeeze him into the wall kind of a little bit, just to try and defend as best as possible. It's a bit hard to defend 2 cars at once, so we're going to tuck back to the racing line, and Piastri does get by Magnussen, although you can see there they're battling, and as we get very close to the wall on the exit of turn 1, and as we go into turn 2, we've got a little bit of breathing space. It's really not that much, so that would probably dissipate by the end of this straight, as our straight line speed in this first sector has been pretty dismal so far this race. As you can see, we've got quite a large gap to the cars in front of us now, cutting to the end of lap 2. We've got Magnussen still all over the back of us, and as you can see, we got a big snap of oversteer going out of turn 15, and Magnussen gets us into turn 16. So we hold the outside line to try and get the better run on Magnussen, which we do get. And now on board with Kevin Magnussen, who's going to try and make the move on us, and as you can see, he goes to the outside of us, and he'll probably get this move done pretty easily, but it's Oscar Piastri who's actually really trying to get around both of us. Oscar Piastri looks like he's got much better pace than both myself and Magnussen. And looking ahead now to Leclerc, we're going to do a bit of an order check here. It's Leclerc, Verstappen, Hamilton, the top 3, Sainz, Russell, Lando Norris, and P6 doing very well for McLaren. Perez 7th, Alonso, Stroll, and then Pierre Gasly is currently rounding out the top 10 in his Alpine. Alex Albon, P11, so he's just on the cusp of points there in the Williams. Hulkenberg, Tsunoda, Ocon, Bottas, Sargent, Zhou, the driver we're trying to chase down. He's got 4 seconds over us at the moment. We still lead Magnussen, Piastri, De Vries, and Weiss, so that's a bit of a train. Our teammate, unfortunately, is currently last place in that train, but we do have a small gap to Magnussen, so hopefully that will give us a bit of breathing room to the end of this sprint race, so then we can just try and hopefully focus on maybe closing a bit of that gap to Zhou. But Zhou's currently in DRS of Logan Sargent, so that's going to be a bit difficult to try and bridge that gap. And as Sergio Perez makes a move on Lando Norris. So the Red Bull starting to make its way back through the field. So that Red Bull really should be fighting for a podium. Now back to our onboard. It's only barely a lap later, and as you can see, our breathing space I was just talking about before has already evaporated and Magnussen's got by us. So now I really just want to try and stick with Kevin to try and see if we can't bridge a gap to Oscar Piastri behind us. And we actually nearly rear-ended Kevin Magnussen into turn 1 now. Looking at Sergio Perez, he's making a charge through the field, so he's trying to get himself by George Russell at the moment. So this is a battle for P5 and P6 on the road. So these are both still points-paying positions in this sprint race. As you can see, George Russell does end up keeping the position. Now fast-forwarding to the start of lap 7, Sergio Perez now sends it on the inside of George Russell. But George Russell still gets a better exit off the corner and gets back by Sergio. So I'm sure Sergio won't be too pleased with that. And looking at the replay, there is actually a bit of contact in turn 1. It's the end of lap 6, starting lap 7. And as you can see, we've got a small bit of engine wear now showing up on the car. And as Oscar Piastri now gets by us, and we've actually failed to keep the try and keep up with Kevin Magnussen as we get turn 1 all wrong. We go in deep and then get tailing on the exit. So now we've let our teammate Iwasa back through. So we're now P21. So the only car behind us is Nick De Vries in the AlphaTauri, and he's about 2 seconds down on us. Now George Russell versus Sergio Perez once again. Sergio Perez sends it back down on the inside of him into turn 1 once again. And it looks like this time he should get the move done, as he should give George Russell the squeeze, and George Russell's on the outside. Russell's actually going to get DRS here as well. So this battle is far from done. Now jumping on board with ourselves as we go past Iwasa while that battle is still going on. As you can see there, Sergio Perez and George Russell still going at it while we actually hit the wall on the exit of turn 1. So as you can see, that has actually brought up quite a bit of damage on our front wing. So we're going to have to try and limp this home for the last 2 laps. We're not in any points paying positions at the moment. So as long as we can try and keep Iwasa and De Vries behind us, I reckon just limping it back home will be the way to go. And cutting to the end of the sprint race, Charles Leclerc gets the win. Verstappen P2, Sainz P3 is the podium for the sprint race. So a pretty dismal race for ourselves. We couldn't really make up any positions. So that's put on a lot more work for us in the Grand Prix. Looking at the race results now, as you can see, Leclerc, Verstappen, Sainz was the podium. Hamilton, Perez, Russell, Alonso, and Lando Norris round out the points. Only the top 8 received points in the sprint race, remember, and Gasly and Stroll round out the top 10. We did end up not being able to keep Iwasa and De Vries behind us, so we will be starting this Grand Prix in dead last, which does kind of give us a small advantage going into the Grand Prix, as you remember we had a bit of engine wear going into finishing off the sprint race, So I reckon we could probably swap out a few components and receive penalties for them, as you can see here. So this is actually kind of played well because we're going to still start last, so we haven't really changed our starting position whatsoever, but we're actually going to be able to pretty much avoid these penalties by swapping all of these components out now before the Grand Prix. And we're also going to have a quick look at trying to get some upgrades done here as well. So we're looking at a few powertrain things to try and help out that straight line speed. It's never going to help us here at the Grand Prix, as we have to remember we do have to allow for some manufacturing time. So hopefully these will be ready by the 4th race of the season.
And a warm welcome to you from Azadlik Square, heart of Baku, and home, of course, to the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. With high speeds, tight corners and few runoff zones, many are expecting a safety car here today. So our drivers will have to stay very much on their toes and hopefully out of the barriers. Baku City Circuit then. It's an unpredictable 3.7-mile track around the streets of the Azerbaijan capital. 20 turns for our drivers to navigate today, including the infamous Turn 8, one of the tightest and most challenging corners of the season. So with the race not far away from starting, here's what today's grid rundown looks like. Charles Leclerc lines up on pole position, and Max Verstappen lines up alongside. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Sainz, Hamilton, Perez, Russell, Fernando Alonso, Norris, Gasly, Stroll, Albon, Ocon, Hulkenberg, Tsunoda, Bottas, Sargent, Joe, Oscar Piastri, Magnussen, Iwasa, De Vries, and the Rainmaster. It's almost time for the lights to go out, so let's head down to the track where preparations are underway. Anthony Davidson joins me once again in the commentary box. Ant, it's fantastic to have you with us here, but I'm curious, as a man with experience out on the track, how do you stop those pre-race nerves from becoming overwhelming when you're lining up on the grid?
Well, I imagine they'll be starting to feel the adrenaline as they anticipate the run down into turn 1, a bit like preparing to go into battle. The unknown situation will bring nerves, but that's a good thing. It will keep them focused on the moment and on their surroundings as we build towards the start of the Grand Prix.
And here we are again on the grid. I'm really not wanting to get used to being this far back on the grid. As you can see there, we're going to start on the medium tyre and then finish strong on the hard tyre. I reckon our pace on the hard tyre is going to be much better than on the medium. And as you can see, we actually received a 22 grid place penalty. So, but because we finished P22, we're going to start P22, and so that grid penalty effectively becomes voided, but we do get a heap of fresh components on the car as we start our warm-up lap. So again, this warm-up lap's all about just trying to get our tyres into the optimum temperature range to try and allow us to get a better race start, as we now come to the end of our warm-up lap and we're about to start pulling it into our grid box and try and get it nice and close to try and optimize this race start. A small benefit from starting last is the fact we have to wait the least amount of time, so our tyres should be a bit warmer than the people starting in front of us as it's lights out, and away we do start this race. So as you can see, Iwasa actually gets a really good start, and so he's jumping up a few positions here, but he's kind of getting boxed in, which is a bit awkward. So as you can see, we actually also broke a bit earlier than probably initially planned, but we do manage to lift off the brake pedal a little bit to try and send the car further into the pack, and we're trying to make up as many positions here and just trying to then defend for the rest of the race. And here our exit speed off the corner isn't too great, but luckily we've got a little bit of help from Piastri in front of us, so a bit of Australian helping Australian here to try and help defend from Joe, as we do send it up the inside of Piastri, our fellow Australian. And we now look to try and see if we can get Bottas as well, because this is a corner where the AI tend to take pretty slow. And as you can see, that was a very dodgy move on our behalf, so we kind of let Bottas take that one back, but that does mean that Piastri is going to have a look at getting around us once again, so we kind of send it a bit wide deliberately to try and force Piastri to back out of the move. Onto the end of the first lap, Joe is trying to get by us, so we're going to try and squeeze him a little bit here, as this pit wall here can be a bit deceiving, and we really squeeze him up to the wall, but I don't think it's enough to scare Joe out of the move, so Joe's going to go in for the move and get it done. While we were battling, this was happening in front of us. This is George Russell versus the Aston Martin of Fernando Alonso. So Russell's already on the move to try and make up as many positions as he can. So he's now got by Fernando Alonso. But no, Fernando Alonso's actually got a much better run. So the racing line seems to be the line to be on, as that's got a bit more grip. And now going into the castle section, we've hit the wall, and that's ripped off our front wing completely. So now this has absolutely thrown our race upside down. I was hoping to have a semi-decent run on this medium tyre, then try and make up everything I lost on the hard tyre, but nah. So yeah, the race has just been thrown away. So we're now trying to make it back to the pits, and as you can see, we're just thrown it over the curb, and now it's causing some of the AI to try and make some desperate moves, as Magnussen now makes a move up on the inside of us, and he actually sends it onto Piastri as well, and he rips Piastri's wing off. So now there's two of us on this lap alone that's lost our front wing, and with how desperate the AI can sometimes be on trying to get by someone who's missing their front wing, this may make it a bit awkward trying to make it into the pit lane. As you can see there in front of us, that looks like Piastri's on the outside of Kevin Magnussen. Piastri will have to try and make it into the pit lane, so he backs out of it to get into the pit lane, and we were kind of squeezing our teammate into the wall a tad there to try and for ourselves to make it, as we couldn't really back off there, and we'll just be causing a havoc. So both ourselves and Piastri, the two Australians on the grid, have to make a lap 2 pit stop for a front wing replacement. And so this pit stop's going to be a bit slow. And as you can see, that the team's actually struggling a little bit to get the front wing lined up, so the pit stop's even longer than it should have been already, and so we've lost a heap of time to Piastri. And a bit of an awkward stage there where our steering wheel actually got centered rather than following what my actual wheel was doing. So the car got sent past that white line, so luckily we only received a warning for that one and not an actual full penalty. So looking at a replay here of what actually happen to cause Piastri. So Kevin Magnussen's desperate to get by us because he knows we're going to be slow through this next section, and he sends it over the curb, and it's actually his front wheel that taps Piastri's front wing, which actually for some reason rips off the whole thing rather than just damaging the end plate. So really unlucky for Piastri, but kind of have to put that one onto Magnussen as we now do an order check. It's Leclerc, Verstappen and Perez. The two Red Bulls are actually on the podium here. Hamilton, Sainz, Alonso, George Russell, Stroll, Ocon and Gasly round out the top 10 here in Azerbaijan, with Hülkenberg, Tsunoda, Sargent, Norris, Albon. The two Alfa Romeos of Bottas and Zhou, P16 and P17. Kevin Magnussen, a bit controversial what he's just done. He sits in P18 now. His race has not been at all affected by that contact. Our teammate Iwasa's in P19, De Vries P20, and then it's Piastri and ourselves in P21 and P22 after already having to make a pit stop to replace our front wings after those pieces of contact with the wall and Magnussen. So yeah, not a great start for us and Piastri, and as we now look to Pierre Gasly, he's now making a move on his teammate, and this is for P9 and P10 on the road. So the two Alpines battling it out for the minor points paying positions, and as you can see in front of them, they're starting to lose touch with the Aston Martin of Stroll. So the more they battle, the more chance there is for Hülkenberg to try and make something of this as well. But I reckon they probably should have played a bit more of a team game there. It is only lap 4 in this race. Riding on board now with Nico Hülkenberg, and as you can see, he's now being passed by the other Alpine. So he made up a move on the Alpine, and now the Alpine of Ocon's actually got back by him. So this is starting to form quite the train. And now looking on board with Carlos Sainz, he actually nearly lost it on the straight there, trying to figure out what side of Lewis Hamilton he wanted to go around to make this move done. And as they continue to battle into turn 1, I reckon Carlos Sainz has the move done though, as the first round of pit stops for the AI starts on lap 9, so this would be for everyone who started on the soft tyre. And it looks like there that Stroll is actually going onto another set of soft tyres as the two Red Bulls now battle it out going down the main straight. So that is Perez getting by Max Verstappen, so Max Verstappen maybe got a small problem, but Sergio Perez is the king of the streets as we remember. Jumping ahead now for an order check, and it's been 10 laps since the start of the Grand Prix. Leclerc, then the two Red Bulls of Perez and Verstappen. Carlos Sainz, the two Mercedes of Hamilton and Russell. Fernando Alonso, Gasly, Hülkenberg, and then Ocon, the other Alpine, finishing out the top 10. Logan Sargent is very much on the cusp of points here, but he's yet to make a pit stop. Yuki Tsunoda, Lando Norris, the two Alfa Romeos of Zhou and Bottas, P14, P15. Kevin Magnussen, Stroll, our teammate Iwasa, P18, De Vries, Albon, and then Piastri and ourselves, P21 and P22. You may notice that on the timing as well, we're 25 seconds now down on Piastri. I did make a couple of mistakes on the first few laps of the hard tyre while it was getting up to temperature by going down the escape road once, and then a couple of more little half spins which did slow me down a bit, but our pace even on the hard tyre genuinely isn't there, as now the pit stops now start for the medium tyre runners of the Grand Prix. And this here is Lewis Hamilton now trying to get by Lando Norris. So Hamilton has made his pit stop, remember, only a lap ago. He was there with George Russell, and Hamilton makes a pretty easy move on his fellow Brit. And as now Leclerc, he now makes his pit stop from the lead of the race, which gives Perez the lead, as Verstappen opts to try and pit first here. And now the two Aston Martins and Pierre Gasly are now going at it, as I can't quite make out which Aston Martin is, but one of them is pulling into the pits as we speak, and the other one is going to battle along with Gasly, and it looks like it was Stroll who's pulled into the pit. So it's Fernando Alonso still trying to defend from the Alpine, and Alpines are notoriously known for their straight line speed, but it looks like the Aston Martin's going to get the better exit to try and defend this position, and it looks like turn 3 won't be the spot for Gasly to try and get back round, as he sits tight behind the Aston Martin and just waits for maybe a better opportunity going into turn 1. Further up the field here, this is George Russell now. He's attacking Max Verstappen, so Max Verstappen must be definitely having some sort of gremlin in that car, because his pace has been just tumbling in so far this Grand Prix. As you remember, just before he was also passed by the teammate Sergio Perez, and he's lost positions now to both Sainz and Hamilton, as Russell makes that a pretty easy move. As Lando Norris now comes into the pit, so he's finally making a pit stop, or this could also be his second pit stop. I haven't been really up to date with the pit stops, but this just means that is another driver we can close our gap in a bit as now the two Mercedes battle it out going down the main straight. So this race has really much become a battle of DRS, and you can see there Lewis Hamilton actually backs out of it. He doesn't want to battle with George Russell. It's been a while, but we're back on board with ourselves, and we're really battling tyre where these hard tyres have fallen off a cliff, as Max Verstappen is out of the race, so he must have been carrying a gremlin in that car, and the safety car is deployed. So now it's really important we do not let the safety car pass us, as that may hold us up a bit. So this now really changes the game. And as Albon's also out of the race, so maybe there was a bit of a crash, but there was a bit of a delay between the two cars being listed as DNFs. So depending how much time we've got to the rest of the field, a pit stop might be on the cards here as we now look at a replay of what happened. So Max Verstappen comes to a stop at the castle section. No smoke is present, unlike here. As you can see, Alex Albon pulls off at turn 3. So I reckon Alex Albon's actually had more of an engine failure than Max Verstappen. Now, back onto the end of the next lap, we decide that we will go for a pit stop pretty late into the lap, as we now pull in, and we're going to go onto a set of soft tyres to try and make up and see if we can't make up a few positions here. But I reckon the soft tyres will be a bit more handy than the hard tyres, because we also have to try and bridge the gap from how far back behind we are from having this pretty shocking run on the hard tyres to catching up to the pack. So we've only got probably 2 laps of us driving at full pace to then being able to catch up to the safety car queue, which I would say is probably about 3/4 of the lap in front of us at the moment. It is a 35-second gap to Bottas. Now we're going to do a bit of an order check here. So it's Leclerc from Perez and then Sainz. So 2 Ferraris on the podium now. George Russell and Hamilton, the 2 Mercedes in 4th and 5th. Alonso, Hulkenberg, Ocon, Sargent. So Sargent's actually in the points genuinely at the moment. He has made a pit stop. Kevin Magnussen rounds out the points in P10. Gasly, Tsunoda, Norris, Stroll. Our teammate Iwasa up in P15, so that's about where I expect our teammate to be, on the cusp of points or even generally in the mid-pack. Nick De Vries, Zhou, Piastri, Bottas. Ourselves in P20 now, after Verstappen and Albon become the 2 DNFers of this race. So we've been gifted a couple of positions, but I'm hoping that we can actually try and catch up. So you can see there, Bottas, next car in front of us. He's just gone through turn 1. As we're still very much in the final sector, still trying to make our way onto the main straight. So we've got a lot of time to try and catch up if we want to get to the back of the pack. And as you can see, 2 laps on, safety car's coming in, and we have not caught up to the safety car yet. So maybe this whole pit stop could have actually hindered our chance of trying to get up a couple of positions, but in the end, I think making the pit stop will become a benefit. As you can see on the mini-map, they're not too far away, so I reckon if we can just floor it and try and catch up, they're still going to be tucked in behind Charles Leclerc, who's going to determine when they do their restart. So as long as we don't pass anyone and make this run that we're going to get an advantage, we shouldn't come under the eyes of the shields. And as you see, we've got a massive run coming up onto the pack. The closing speed is absolutely rapid, so I reckon if we can make a move into turn 2, we should be pretty safe. And going into turn 1, everyone is checked up so much, we actually make the move before turn 2, so we get by Bottas or just on pure traction, and we get by both Piastri and Zhou under the brakes. So these soft tyres are definitely the correct way to go in this final stage of the race. Looking ahead now, it's Gasly versus Magnussen, but we're actually also going to cut back to our POV as we're going to have a look at getting a pass on Nick De Vries, and we're going a bit too late on the brakes, and so we actually slam into the side of a Wasser a little bit, but we do have the faster tyres, so I didn't really want to get held up too much. So as we're now already caught up to the back of Stroll, and we're already dropping a Wasser at the same time, I reckon a small dive bomb into turn 7 here could be on the cars, and as we do, we send it down on the inside of Lance Stroll going into turn 7. So now we kind of have to sit tight here behind Lando Norris. There's nowhere we can really go through the castle section. And our run here on Lando going down from turn 15 into turn 16 has been mega, so we're going to send it up the inside and then try and use the slipstream of Tsunoda to try and defend from Norris, because Norris, according to the fastest lap, is the fastest car on track. So now as Gasly gets by Logan Sargent, this race has really ramped up all of a sudden with that late race safety car. So Sargent is still on the cusp here to try and get some points for Williams, but it may only be the 1 point as Gasly got by him. So we're now trying to get by Yuki Tsunoda. So we're going to pull out of the slipstream, but as you can see, as soon as we pulled out of the slipstream, our straight line speed didn't really get cancelled out, but it became less prominent against Yuki Tsunoda. So we make it up the inside of Yuki Tsunoda, and that's for P12 now. So we're really on the end of the points here. So, and as you can see, we've already caught up to the back of Kevin Magnussen, fast forwarding a little bit. So we're going to make the move on Kevin Magnussen into turn 4 there. So yeah, I reckon points are definitely on at the moment. So Logan Sargent's our next victim, and as you can see, already caught up to the back of him. So we're actually going to go down the inside of him at turn 13. That's a very odd spot to try and make a move done. But he's going to send it around the outside of turn 15. So that's also another really odd spot, and he nearly gets squeezed into the wall. So we gave him just enough space to make that a contact-free battle there. So I do think, though, the straight line of the Williams is going to come into play again, as it does. So Logan Sargent's going to get back by us. So we're going to have to try and play this smart here if we want to get some points. So we actually back out of the throttle, just as Lewis Hamilton did early in the race. And we're going to stick behind Logan Sargent, as we should be getting some DRS going into this lap. So the DRS should definitely be helping us get by Logan Sargent as we now open the DRS going down this second straight. We go around the outside of Logan Sargent, so a bit more onto the racing line, where we've seen a lot of people get the much better grip on corner exit. So now we really want to try and catch up to Gasly if we can in this next lap and a half. Coming forward to the last lap, they're going 3 wide with Nico Hulkenberg, and this is for a battle for P7 as we get it very sideways on corner exit, which has kind of compromised our run into turn 2. And now looking at Gasly there, he's going to get by Nico Hulkenberg, but as I was just saying, that outside line seems to be where all the grip is. So now this has become quite the battle, a 4-car battle for P7 in this race. So we're tucking behind Nico Hulkenberg, and it's actually going to be Gasly who's going to go around the outside. We locked up a little bit, so lucky to not rear-end Nico there. And as Gasly now goes down the inside, I reckon Nico, though, is going to get a bit of a better run as he does. So we're now going to try and send it down the inside of Pierre Gasly so that we can try and get Nico Hulkenberg later on in the lap. So this ended up being a bit of a late move, but Gasly actually makes a bit of contact with us. So on the final lap, we've now picked up some side pod damage. But now looking forward, it is Charles Leclerc who gets the win from Perez and Sainz. So it's been quite the dominant weekend for Charles Leclerc, also getting the sprint race win. But this is it. This is the battle. Can we get P7 to be our first point-paying position of the season, and for Brabham in their return to Formula 1? Coming on to the back straight now. We're about half a second back, but we do have DRS, so dumping the final amount of battery. We've got no battery left. DRS is open. We're gaining, and we're going to go past Nico Hulkenberg on the line to claim P7 for our first points-paying position as Brabham and in this series. So what was looking like to be a pretty dismal race, because remember, we were about 30 seconds back off the next car in front of us, sitting P22 before the late safety car came out. So we have turned 30 seconds off the pack into points in the course of about 5 or so laps. So I would say that's a pretty good recovery in the end. That race win for Leclerc also has a bit of significance for him, because he is now equal 49th in the overall wins list of all time in Formula 1. So he's now just behind Riccardo Patrese and Ralf Schumacher on the all-times win list, and also he's now ahead of Farina and also Clay Regazzoni. So quite a big significance to this win for Charles, now being equal 49th in the standings, and he's also now the second different winner for this season, with Max Verstappen being the other driver to win a race this season.
Looking at the podium, you can see that red suit familiar to fans across the globe. A world-class win for a world-class team. Ferrari, do it again.
Now, looking at the full race results, the podium was Leclerc from Perez and Sainz, so Charles Leclerc had a very dominant race weekend in the end. George Russell just shy of a podium in P4. Fernando Alonso, then Lewis Hamilton, and ourselves in P7, our first points finish of the season, and with Brabham. Nico Hulkenberg, Gasly and Ocon in the end finishing the top 10, as you can see there. Ourselves between Nico Hulkenberg was less than, just over a tenth of a second in in the end, Kevin Magnussen, Lando Norris, Logan Sargent also nearly got points. He was only about 2 seconds off the points in the end. Stroll, Tsunoda, Zhou, Piastri, Bottas. Iwasa ended up finishing P19, so he lost quite a bit of ground after that safety car restart. Looking at the drivers' standings now, it is very tight in the top three now. Only 7 points separates Verstappen, Perez, and Leclerc. So, bit of a championship battle starting to shape up, and then the midfield battle in this championship is now also heating up. So it's all looking like to be a very close and very exciting championship going forward. And as you can see there, we're also now in P12. So we have jumped up from last in the championship to P12 with that points paying finish. And I'm hoping Iwasa is going to get some points soon, because if we want Brabham to be getting up into the mid-pack in the constructors, as we can see there, we're in P8. I'm going to need some help from Iwasa. So Red Bull is leading the charge at the moment. They're quite a bit clear of Ferrari from Mercedes. So the big three is finishing 1, 2, and 3 so far, with Aston Martin finishing best of the rest. McLaren and Alpine are currently tied on 100 points, behind the Red Bull team. So Williams is the only team yet to score any points. So we're really just trying to get any points possible to try and help this, because it looks like it's going to be a very tight championship this year. Now, we're back at the HQ trying to get ourselves prepped for the next race. And as I was mentioning before, we need to help our teammate Iwasa in whatever way possible. So we're going to give him some G-Force training. And now looking into the marketing, we're going to try and boost our income. So doing any sort of upgrades now possible to try and just get this team up and running and try and boost where we're lacking a bit. So I reckon if we can get some more funds in to try and help upgrades come in, and try and maybe in the future try and expand what we can do with the team, and then also try and help Iwasa, because I reckon if we can try and boost Iwasa's stats a little bit, we could be really trying to get both of us into the top 10 on a bit more regular basis. But yeah, it's good to finally get our goal accomplished. Only 3 races in of trying to get some points this season. So let's try and see if we can't make any further progress, and try and see if we can't improve our season best result of P7 at the moment. So yeah, that's all for this episode. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next episode when we go to Miami for the Grand Prix.